This is the second PowerPoint for week 2. It is about the literature review. This is a very short one. It's only 4 slides. And this is slide 1. So think of a literature review as a community discussion. It's a bunch of researchers discussing what they found and what they think other people have done and what gaps there are in the research. So the literature review talks about all the different studies that have been done in your area, so in that topic that you've chosen. It talks about what we know, what we don't know. It'll talk about individual studies and the results that they found, and it will point out what's not in there. So frequently in a literature review it will say 3 studies found that gender affected placement stability, but there were no studies that talked about the relationship between placement stability and foster parents. So that would be a gap. Okay, so when you're doing your literature review, you want to search for studies in the topic area that you've chosen and try to be specific. Try to tune it into your research question. Find out what other people have done, what they found out, and what they didn't do. So it's okay to say, I couldn't find any studies on this topic in your literature review. Okay? So it's a synthesis. We're not just going to list each study by name and then say, study A found this, study B found this, study C found this. We want to synthesize them by different subtopics. So under my placement stability, I had several different subtopics. I had relationships, I had gender, I had race, I had education, I had problem behaviors, I had social skills. So I looked at those different areas and found out what under those different areas, what other people had researched and what they found out about placement stability and those areas with foster kids. So those were my subheadings. I can't tell you what your subheadings are. You have to read the literature and you'll find that out. It'll become evident as you read the studies and find out what everybody said. So when I say synthesize it, I want you to say 3 studies found that gender affected placement stability. Our authors Johnson and Smith found that boys were more likely to disrupt than girls. Okay, so we're talking about all the studies that have gender in them under that topic, under that subheading. Okay. Then you want to briefly talk about them. Who did it? What did they do? And what did they find? What were their results? And I'll teach you how to look at the results section and read that later. You might also want to organize your literature review by the type of study they are. You might be reading a literature and find that first they talk about all the cross-sectional studies, then they talk about all the longitudinal studies, or first they talk about the quantitative studies in that topic, and then they'll talk about the qualitative studies. So that's another way that you'll see literature reviews organized. And again, it's really important to point out the gaps. What has not yet been done in that area? And then finally, in your literature review, when you're writing up yours, you want to talk about how your research will build on the past research. So you'll notice as you're reading other people's literature reviews, they talk about why their study is important and how it fits into that community conversation. So they may say, we're going to duplicate somebody else's study. They may say, other people have studied X, Y, and Z, but nobody studied G, so we're going to also study G. They may say, several people have studied X, Y, and Z, but not with a large enough sample, so our sample will be larger. So you want to think about how your study fits into this broad conversation called the literature review.